Hello everyone, welcome back to another session. This is another session of the Spring of Code. Today we have Habib with us from Blender. So thanks a lot for joining us, Habib, and we'll talk more about Blender, what Blender is, and what all projects are over there. And I believe Habib, you are a maintainer over at Blender, at the Blender project.
Yeah, I'm basically a contributor to Blender on a volunteering basis. Yeah.
Cool. Would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a software engineer by trade. I've been involved with Blender for the last, I guess, couple of years, a little bit more. Yeah, I've known Blender for much longer, actually. Just got involved as an artist, and then actually found out developing a bit more fun.
See a lot of Blender enthusiasts over here in the chat. That's nice.
Okay. Well, yeah, sure. So I will go through the Blender, like what it is exactly. So for those who don't know, yeah, in the last year I've been a mentor for GSoC. So I'm hoping to give quite a nice introduction to how to be involved in Blender as primarily as a developer, but I'll say a few things here and there about like how to be in the community as a whole, as an artist or just as an enthusiast.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for sharing. We're really looking forward to the stream today. And let's get started. So we all know about the agenda which we have over here. We're going to talk more about the organization and the projects and how to get started with contributing and the prerequisites and stuff. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to share those in the chat. But Habib, would you like to share your screen? And I believe you were showing me some nice videos before we went live. So let's do that one.
Yeah, I'll start with my screen for this one.
There we go.
Cool. No need to go to full screen mode. I'll be switching between links here and there just to show like the overall community thing. But yeah, let's get into it. So
it's actually not visible much. So can you? I believe we would have to do the full screen one because this is not looking.
Is it not? The big one?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not visible.
Sure, no problem. Better?
That looks good. Yep, better.
Cool. Yeah, so a few things I wanted to mention today so that we're all on the same page. I'll introduce Blender a little bit, what it is, like from an artist's point of view, how you can use it, and a few really cool demos. Not for me, of course, like from cool artists. And then for the second part, we will go into the development part, like how is Blender structured more or less from the inside. And we talk a little bit about modules. This is how Blender understands itself or splits itself internally. And then we go into development stuff, like what do new developers need to know? Like, well, how do you find your way around all the links and community links in Blender? Just a broad overview for all of that. And the interesting part is also GSoC. So what's special about this year? And yeah, a few tips here and there how to get involved and what you can do. If we have time, I will actually show an example of like how to do like a very small, like what I'm working on currently, just to give you an idea of what do developers actually do, like what tools do we use and how do you communicate and things like that. At the very end, there is a session for Q&A. I actually have the chat from YouTube here for some questions here and there, but we'll see. Like, feel free to ask anytime, but it's probably like better to answer them at the end of each section or at the very end. Yeah, sure. So for the first link, I will just I wanted to show a quick video which demonstrates all right. Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there, a lot of things you can do, and that's really what Blender is used for. That's what you saw. So let's go into, I'll go back to my screen. And this is basically what Blender really lets you do. It's a 3D computer graphics tool set, mostly 3D, we'll come to that. But it does 3D and 2D nowadays, as you've seen in the video. During the first few seconds, you can do all kinds of texturing, animating, rendering, and a combination of all of those, or just single steps also. The fun part is that it's open source. So there is a huge plus for Blender is that it has a really big community that's coming from this open source, and what that means, of course, is that it's free and free forever. Actually, there is like really mechanisms put in there in place so that it does stay free forever. Like, there is a lot of concerns, we will come into that, but it does get funds from different companies and from commercial ones, and people get concerned all the time, like, no, I don't want this company to have influence on, but this will not be the case. It will really be free and free forever, and also open source. A few other artworks like that summarize also what you can do. For example, the range, just to show the range or the spectrum of all the changes that you can do. Like, you can go from super realistic looks, like you see on the left one, to comedy or cartoonish styles. You've probably noticed by now it's like really popular for movies, but also for stills. So needless to say, your end user are artists, and they're not developers or accountants. You're mostly targeting artists when you're releasing Blender. So yeah, a few other technical demos now that we've seen, the final product, so to speak. I also want to show how the process is inside Blender, like really quickly. I will share one more video. This one has been done.
If you have any questions, you can put those in the chat session, and we'll try to answer those at the end. This one?
Yeah.
It's still loading, I believe.
Yeah, just a quick note. I wanted to also pay attention to what's going on here, like what has been done here, for example, environment modeling and shading. Yeah, that's actually the part I wanted to show. I'll go back to my screen. Okay, cool. But yeah, as I mentioned, like I wanted to display the different like parts of making a movie, so to speak, using Blender. And that movie you just saw is from Spring, so it's the Blender Institute. So Blender does not only produce the software, but also has a studio with artists that also use the software in order to produce movies. This way you can ensure that developers and artists work very well together and they produce the best tools at the end to for artists. Otherwise, the worst that can happen is like if when developers produce a tool that no one uses, or I don't know, somehow too complex to use, so studios don't adopt it. But if you do work very closely with artists and studios, and even to really on a full movie, like from the beginning to the end, then your tool set and workflow gets refined really well. And that's the idea that Blender is embracing now for many years. Like, when pushing this development forward, it also tries to do it within a movie. Just one more, this movie is next gen. Maybe some of you have heard of it, but it's been released on Netflix, and it's a feature movie that has been done completely with Blender. I think I'm sharing just one more video. I just wanted to show an interesting section with it.
Layout and previs to try and get to a point where we sort of knew what movie we were making even prior to making it. So to show you a movie that describes this in a little more detail, sort of walks you through the stages of previs all the way through to final animation.
Yeah, so the idea is like really to show you the whole process of movie making using mostly Blender, at least, from this studio, which is Tangent Animation. Let's have a look.
There should be some audio.
Did it just explode?
Thanks.
I gotta go back! Get my mom!
Okay, fine. Maybe I'll start.
Hey guys! Did it just explode? I gotta go back! Get my mom!
dog is this?
Hey guys! What? Did he just explode? We gotta go back. We gotta get Mom.
Okay, fine. Whose dog is this?
Hey guys! Did he just explode? We gotta go back. We gotta get Mom.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to show from that movie. As you can see, there's a lot going on there. Like there's so many steps in production, and I wanted to do this transition to. Can I share my screen again? Yeah, to actually to go into the development part. You've seen like in each movie there is like some part of storyboarding, and then comes animation, and then rendering. And it is a little bit similar to how Blender is structured in the inside. Like we have so-called modules, and there are like few areas in Blender that take care of the modeling, like how you do the characters, and then other areas take care of animation and rigging. So basically those steps that you saw in the movie making. And others, VFX and video. Yeah, this is the pre-processing and the cool After Effects that you see in the movie. There are other modules that I also would like to show very briefly to showcase what Blender is actually doing on the inside. Yeah. So this is the first dive into development, let's say. So we are officially in the development part. I've seen a few questions about how to contribute to Blender. So yeah, you're in for a treat. And it starts right here. Yeah, so internally, you will see like a submodule. You can think of it as a software, so to speak. Like you have like, for example, let's go for Blender is chaired by Ton Roosendahl. He's the one who actually founded Blender. And then you can see others, animation and rigging. For example, Sibrin is responsible for things that go into animation, or Dr. Sibrin, I would say. Core is, I believe, the most recent module that has been founded, and it is not really it's not visible to users. It's rather something like infrastructure. So, for example, how do all these modules communicate with each other, or how does the blend format look like? Undo system, when you press Control Z, yeah, you have to kind of you have to access or address this issue on a global way in the whole Blender. Like how do you handle keys and in this case window manager and so on. So yeah, infrastructure stuff. Other modules include modeling. Interesting ones is the builds and tests. This is also very, very relevant for developers, but also nodes and physics. This is what users see directly. So you, as a developer, you can see like here there is a lot of names inside. Like some are development coordinates, product managers, admins, and some developers involved. A lot of names. So this should give you already like a good idea what there is in Blender and what people to talk to if you about feature. Like if you're interested in contributing to Blender to, let's say, rendering, like you already have a model and you want to make it look nice, then what's the render? Yeah, render and cycles. Then you'll probably have to do, you contact those people and see their wiki, their homepage, their code reviews, and their, I believe, this channel on Blender Chat. Yeah, so for that's what I wanted to say about modules. I want to, before, question is like tech stack required. How to start with blending. I'll come into that a bit later, but let's continue with development intro. Like how to actually be, like, let's say you're a developer, you know a little bit of code. What do you want to do? My suggestion is really to learn a bit of Blender. I know this is a bit, I feel like this doesn't get said enough, but it's really important, like to be able to use Blender more or less a little bit, at least in one area. It does take like many years to be a good artist, if not many tens of years. But I don't think it takes a lot of time to learn a few basics, and maybe, I don't know. I saw someone mentioning, like they saw Blender Guru, or there are a lot of tutorials online on Blender on how to do things. Most people start
This
with
is
donuts.
this is yeah. This is true for every project, right? If you want to contribute to that project, you should have a basic understanding of what the project is doing.
Sure.
Yeah, there's tons of resources out there as well. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. The next big thing I would recommend is, like, even if you don't understand anything, a lot of stuff is to just build Blender. Like, there is a wiki I would like to use. I will share, by the way, the slides later on, so you have all the links. But we do have like a wiki page for a new developer, what's there to know, and how you can build the Blender yourself from source code. Not installing the installer, but rather downloading the code and all the IDEs and tools you need, and then building it. That will already show you like what you all need, like what kind of tools you will need. And from there, there's a few things I also wanted to mention, such as...
I see there's a weekly meeting over there as well. Is that something for contributors as well, or is it?
Actually, the meeting is not the weekly meeting. This section does not happen anymore. I think we should delete this section.
I see.
So, it only has been like changed, I guess, I don't know, a few weeks ago, not more than a month. But the idea was, before that, we have like weekly meetings of a few, maybe 1 hour on blender.chat. It's this website. And developers would say, or would report what they have done. Instead, we have something like meeting notes currently, so status report basically from each developer, and I'll go through that briefly. Once you've gone through that, like you know how to build Blender and stuff, it's probably time to start a task or find something to do, something useful. And for that, I have a lot of links, such as the projects, like what's going on in Blender. This is the website, the developer.blender.org, that is used for development purposes. You can think of it as maybe something like GitHub, where you organize issues and tickets and do pull requests. This is Fabricator, and it has that purpose. So these are tickets or tasks or bugs or whatever, and you can see the release status here. We also have the modules that we talked about, and in particular, its activity. So if I click here in animation and rigging, I can see, okay, what's the roadmap, what they want to work on, typically who is involved as members. And then if you scroll down a bit, you see some activity. This guy wants a lattice evaluation bug to be fixed. I don't know. Campbell wants something else. And if you go to the workboard, you can see a lot of tasks that are planned. For example, here there is a bug, custom property of armature operator not up to date. Yeah, as a developer, you can just take this bug. It's not assigned to anyone, so just assign to yourself and start coding. It is a bit harder than it sounds, I know, but that's really the principle. Like, this website organizes a lot of things. We have seen. Same goes for other modules. But if you want to have a look at projects, it's also, you can see the whole list of projects. We talked about rendering a few minutes ago. This is where you find it. Yeah. Other than that, yeah, you mentioned the weekly notes, but I wanted to mention the meeting notes, which is like a way. Okay, just had a quick look at chat.
There are a few questions regarding the very first, contributions a beginner can make. But these things are also like equally important, because once you get started with contributing, you would face, let's say, some issues or something. So where do you actually ask those issues? On the Blender chat, for example, right, in the public channel, and you want to get aware of what all things were discussed. So over that, you can look at the meeting notes, for example, and we'll also talk about like good first issues and answer all the questions that you're sending in the chat. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm coming to that. So the questions are actually good, but that's actually exactly my plan. So I'm not answering them directly, but yeah, so just stay with me. So yeah, the meeting notes, I wanted to show how Blender more or less synchronizes with other developers. We have a forum called devtalk.blender.org. So this is where you can see the banner here. It's basically there for developers only to have either ask questions about development or to synchronize, as I said. You can see there are already some threads about GSoC and Blender not compiling, and so it's really hardcore development stuff. I wanted to suggest like to have a look at some meeting notes when you're trying, when you're new to Blender and you don't know what's going on. Like, there's some announcements. For example, the 2.93 targets. Like, this is what we want to release in the next release. But I find always the new features and changes an interesting section, because it shows you like what's being worked on currently in Blender. What are the hot topics? Just by the number, you can see like node geometry nodes is something that is being worked a lot. Like, there's a lot of commits there. We don't find all the modules that we've seen before here. So not every module gets the same attention all the time. Some people focus, depending on the target. Sometimes people focus, for example, as we can see here, on the new feature. Sometimes the focus is a little bit more on the infrastructure. Here, cycles is relatively little, has little traffic, but user interface did have a little bit more. I guess if we go to another week, like the week before, we can see geometry nodes. It has some updates, but here we see modeling. We didn't see it in the last week. So I feel it's like a very good way to follow along what's going on here. And if you follow along, then you can have a better idea of what's going on. And if you have a better idea of what's going on, then you can find the task for yourself much more easily. Okay, someone said, please reply. I know only Python can I contribute. Yes, you can. I'll show you exactly that. Like, I'll show you what I'm doing, and
just hang on, for just a second, and we'll be answering all these. No worries.
Okay. So yeah, once you've gone through the meeting notes, I think the whole idea here is really to introduce you to the whole process, and so that you can find your first task easily. Like, you know what's going on, and ideally you would identify with an area and say, I really like 3D, or I really like compositing, or I really like Python. So and then you would start there. This is also the list of the contributors if you want to have a closer look what they are doing exactly. For example, this guy has actually a lot of commits this week, but you can see like exactly what he did for, took care of the Windows Manager, some cleanups, and some Python API thing. Okay. The next thing I wanted to show is good first issues. So we do have actually a project in Blender that is called Good First Issue for specifically made for new people to Blender. They are typically easy to do, but the hard part is really getting all your tool chain working and all of that. And that should be like the focus, like that you get the workflow correctly, but the actual task is not necessarily hard. And yeah, you can see here, as with any other project, you can see the workboard, what's to do. Sometimes bugs are also considered a good first issue. There's a task that I'm currently maintaining with Kara. This is actually the student from last year's GSoC, and I mentored that project. And now, after this is about testing, so such tasks are made for new developers. I'm intentionally not going into details. I'll come back to that later on. But yeah, I hope you get the idea that you can go through the projects, find something easy to understand or marked as first good issue, and start with that. Yeah, after that, you can, I guess, just start coding. And dive really right into it. So I guess we could take a few general questions before diving into GSoC.
Yeah, there were a few questions regarding the contribution part only. So maybe we can talk about the tech stack a bit more, because there was some people like, I only know Python, I only know these things. So what prerequisite would you suggest in terms of the tech stack?
The tech stack? Sure. So generally, Blender is developed in C and C++. That's for the most part. But it also offers a Python API for technical artists. For example, if you want to develop an add-on or some plugin, so to speak, you can do it in Python. In Python, you can also do some development stuff. For example, the UI uses Python in many places. But you can also do a lot of infrastructure things in Python. For example, what we do currently is automated testing. We do it in Python only. So we also use some other basic tools like version control for Git and Subversion. Other tools include CMake. I guess it's in CMake, and I guess that's pretty much it. You can also go hardcore and use all the tools you want. Like some people I know use Ccache and Ninja for faster compilation, but all of those are just tools around compiling and are not necessary to get you started with Blender. You can also do it on any platform. Linux and macOS and Windows, they are all officially supported. Although, you might, for example, depending on the area you want, you might be using GPU or not. And for that, for example, if you're using NVIDIA GPUs, then of course Mac is not really very nice. The support is not very nice. Or I think most of the developers use Linux, but most of the users actually are on Windows. So it makes sense to be on any of those platforms. They are all supported from Blender, so any addition to any platform is really helpful.
Yes. And could you maybe hint on what beginner-friendly issues might be there for someone who is like just starting out? Maybe we can look at the good first issues and see what what all requirements are there.
Sure, I would actually do it a bit differently. I would look at the modules, and for me, and say a little bit about it. What you need to know in order to be usually like involved in such module. So for most of them, like C and C++ are really useful. That's the code we use. That's the language we use everywhere here. Yeah, and I would just mention a few things that I am familiar with. Like it's really a lot of stuff that for like most areas I really have no idea what they're doing there. But I am familiar like with the couple, and I'll just say a few things about it. Modeling is one of my favorite. It's actually the actual 3D stuff that happens in Blender. So for that, you will need some 3D knowledge, like a little bit of geometry, maybe some basic linear algebra for rotation and matrix multiplication. And that's pretty much it. Like, and then you're good to go to start. Then you can learn a lot from there. For example, you can also for a few bucks. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, there is no larger projects planned, but that's actually all I can think of right now. Like if you're good in geometry, then this is good for you. If you want to ask something, sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, this is a very great, in brief summary of how people can actually get started with the, exploration part, which is very important. So you mentioned something like with different modules, you mentioned something like, these are all the people you can reach out to for this module. This is what this module does and all these things. So I believe those resources are pretty much like, I believe, at least for me, if I wanted to start with contributing to Blender, that is what I would look at. And that is like pretty much more than enough for me to get started with, because that's what you need, right? You need the communication with the community. You need the links, relevant links to the project, and some good first issues. And yeah, that's it. And before that, before that, actually use the project. So that is common to every open source project. Like first use it and then start with the contribution part. Can you maybe share these links with me so that I can add these in the description and later on people can look into it?
Sure, I'll share the whole slides if you want to.
Nice. Yeah, that's fine. So for anyone who is watching, we'll be sharing all these slides. I'll link it in the description so then you can check it out. But let's now also talk about Google Summer of Code.
Link for Blender's repo? That's the question. You'll find it actually here. This is in the developer intro. You will be finding how to build Blender, and they will tell you where to download it from. Okay, so let's go to the next section which is GSoC. So the good news is Blender is participating in GSoC this year. We do have a lot of ideas that we think are good for GSoC. Blender has been growing and growing, and GSoC also has been growing. Last year, I believe we had did we have 8 or how many? Or 10? Yes, so a lot of projects. This is from last year, and as you can see, there was a lot of slots, a lot of projects.
8 and 10 is a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to show the starting point for GSoC. Maybe you've realized already. I don't want to go too much into details, like step-by-step things, but I want to give you the starting point from each section. And for GSoC, this is the way to start. This is really it. And you'll find things that are specific to Blender. Of course, everything else you can read on the Summer of Code project or website. I think I've been a little bit too fast there, but I'm assuming that everyone is familiar with GSoC. If not, it's just a few words about it. Let's go.
It's a
website.
open source program by Google for students.
Yeah, so it's not directly by Google. So the organization, so Google wants to bring together organizations, like open source organizations with developers, in particular new developers. So what Google does is like it sponsors the whole project so that students get paid during their job at Blender, so to speak. And also the organization then gets paid as well for mentoring those students. And in such a way, it improves the quality of open source projects because they have, they have new contributors, and hopefully with higher quality because they have more time to contribute. Like it's not like on a volunteering basis only, but also as a part-time or full-time job. And also because it makes it more attractive to to find hopefully like higher quality contributors.
One thing I want to share, like, also it's not a Google internship. You're not working for Google. You'll be working with the organization you get selected on. That's also a thing to keep in mind. Now it's this year they changed it quite a lot. I was at the Mentor Summit last year, virtual summit. They were like, now it's, I believe, part-time, and hours have been reduced, and there have been some changes related to people who from coding boot camps and stuff like that can also attend. So yeah, definitely this year has been a lot of change in Google's mode of code. Make sure you check out the eligibility criteria and stuff, because definitely it's open now to more people. And it's also like because previously we used to have 3 evaluations, right? And if you fail one evaluation, then GSoC period is like not considered complete for you. I believe that is also removed now. You can finish your work early. Yeah. You can finish your work early, or you can finish your work afterwards. A lot of changes have been made. Yeah, stipend has also cut into half because the time has been cut into half. So yeah, so many changes have been made.
Okay. Yeah.
But the open source spirit still lives on. That is common to everyone. And there was a question like, rather than participating in GSoC, can we contribute to Blender? Most definitely, you can.
Yeah, of course. That's how I actually started. I didn't start into contributing with GSoC just like that. I actually got my, when I wanted to contribute to Blender, I just looked at the GSOC ideas and chose something from there, because they are usually like good first issues. Like even if the idea, like the exact idea, is not attractive or is not possible or too hard, the general area is usually a good place to start. For example, here, curve improvements. Maybe you noticed, like when we were going through all the modules and stuff, curves did not really pop up. But once we went to GSoC, it's like a very specialized area, and then it seems like it's somewhere to consider.
Yeah.
About the Python thing, there is also projects that you can do in Python, which include automated testing. This is actually the project I mentored last year, so it's something to consider. Yeah, so depending on your skills and your interests, you can maybe find something there. Just a few notes from my side. Like this might be a bit harder to find, but this is the email from the founder of Blender for the GSoC community, or the Blender community, to tell them about GSoC. And there are a few things like to really keep in mind, that GSoC is not like, for example, a hand-holding event, like where you're going through with the student, like, and telling them step by step what they do. But we are really, especially this year, like expecting a lot of initiative from the student or candidates, and that they look for themselves a lot of and find out a lot about Blender by themselves, and then work themselves through all the way to a real idea. And of course, they can ask questions in between. That's not like that's not the issue at all. But it is kind of expected to. We do expect, like, we do think that good candidates are those who did a lot on themselves, like kind of came a long way. And not just ask, I'm interested, tell me what to do. Yeah. Another point is that I wanted to mention is like within the expectations. For Blender specifically, it does help a lot that you have been involved before, like you're not completely 100% new, and or that you can show that you can, that you're able to submit basic patches. That also helps, but we never put that as a requirement. So we just have the typical Google Time report requirements, like you need to have the skills, like to actually do the job. So you will not be taught C++ in GSoC, like you're kind of expected to know that already. And Blender is like, or the mentoring organization is supposed to guide you through the plan on a higher level, rather than on the small details on understanding stuff. Of course, like it's not like a hard cut. Like if you don't know this I don't know, like keyword in C++, then you're not in. But it's more about like the focus. Like the focus should be on the higher level, like guiding, and not on the low level teaching stuff. Yeah, those are actually the few notes I wanted to say. And again, I'm keeping this a little bit vague, like on purpose, actually, just to give you like a few starting point and make you a little bit more excited about how to contribute, and make you want to read much more about it. That's actually that concludes my part, like my comments on GSoC. I think we should have a look at the questions.
I don't see any more new questions, so I believe we can continue.
Okay. Yeah, just one comment I see in the chat, like GitHub/Blender. I believe that's a mirror and not the original.
I just sent a link to the organization. The original one would have to search for that, but it's like you mentioned, it's mentioned in the links you presented. So yeah, we'll be sharing these slides with you so that you can explore. And by the way, this session is also recorded, so you can come back to it later on. I see a question over here that the Blender tech stack that has been mentioned in the GSoC, is that enough?
What do you mean? Like,
yeah, for a contribution.
Yeah, usually if it says, let's have a look.
But you should definitely have an open mind, right, to learn new things.
That's for sure, yeah. For example, here, if it says requirements Python, then it's usually correct, yeah. There are other things that we don't mention that we think are easy to learn. For example, if you don't know Git, then I think it's fine. Or Subversion, these are like tools to make you submit patches. And they're usually easy to learn, or at least you can learn them quickly. Like there are just few commands in the command line on how to make a patch and how to submit it. We don't put those in the requirements because they're really not required. Like, and we also expect the student to pick them up really quickly. For example, as you've seen, we work with Fabricator, which is not GitHub, and it does have a slightly different like workflow than GitHub. So we don't have like pull requests, but we have patches and revisions and things like that. We don't mention that in the requirements, but we kind of expect the student to get up to speed really quickly with that.
Cool. And there's a question regarding, like, I've heard Blender uses a lot of hardware resources, so should we go with it if I have an old system?
I don't think that's an issue. It depends on the area, of course. Like sometimes, for example, Blender supports VR. Of course, it doesn't make sense if you to work there if you don't have a VR headset. And as I mentioned before, like there are some areas that use GPU computing. So again, like if you don't have the hardware, then it's not really a good idea to work there. On the other hand, there's really nothing stopping you from from using it from an old system. There's so much more to do, like in the infrastructure, modeling, compositing. It just uses regular CPU with relatively little power, and at least for development, it shouldn't be a problem at all. Like usually, hardware becomes a problem when it stops you from doing something. As long as you can do it, if you're a little bit slower because of the hardware, that's not a problem. But if it does stop you from testing, then yeah, it's a little bit. I don't know if it's possible.
No, that makes sense. Let's see if we have any other questions.
Got a Pentium and 4 gigabytes RAM. I think I'm not sure if Blender runs on that, but if it does, then you're I don't know. Try it out. I don't know.
All right, I believe we answered all the questions. Let's see if there are any other. So does Blender use C++ libraries like OpenGL, or the software has its own thing?
Oh yeah, it does. It does use a lot of libraries. I can show you just the repository. Here's a quick list of the libraries we use. So it does use OpenGL. It does use CUDA for NVIDIA support, OpenCL, I believe, and lots of different libraries from all over the place. So if you have like some knowledge in some specific libraries, for example, CUDA or OpenGL, then it's definitely valuable. Yeah. It's a bit of a rarity, by the way, like to have find someone really the expert in OpenGL. Request.
All right, if we have any other questions, do let us know. Will coding help me in physics? Depends.
I mean, Blender does have a physics engine.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's what's meant or physics in general. But I would say the opposite is definitely true for Blender. So if you know some physics, you will be able to contribute a lot. For example, the renderer is what we call cycles is physics-based. So it's ray tracing, and there's a lot of physics involved there that you can use for good advantage for coding. And the opposite, I guess, is true if you like transfer, I don't know. Coding usually involves a little bit of, if it does involve a little bit of math.
if you do have interest in physics and like you're doing something related to it, I believe it can help you in some ways, and like can definitely help you in learning and like help you in, I know many research projects that use coding, right? So yeah, totally, it's like totally what about your use case. Alrighty. Cool. Don't see any more questions, and well, that was it for today, folks. Thanks a lot for joining. It was such an amazing session, Habib, and really thank you for joining. And I will be sharing the there's one question: is there any online remote facilities for testing Blender? This might be the case when someone does not have, let's say, a proper hardware.
I'm not aware of that as a user. So that's definitely possible. For example, those studios that you see that they use render farms, so they kind of like do their own thing on their computer and then send it to another powerful computer that does the rendering very quickly. They're just to so they only have like the necessary hardware on their desk, and the really powerful and supercomputers are somewhere else. So that's certainly doable. The other thing is we have 1 second. So we basically have computers online that can build Blender for you. So in parts of our continuous integration pipeline, you can, for example, I'm on macOS, and if I want to build for Linux, then I can do that. This is exactly for that, to facilitate testing. Like if you want to send a Linux version to user, but you're on Windows, you can do that.
Nice.
But I guess a minimum of hardware is to be expected on your desk. Like you have to be, to be able to build Blender and deploy it at least on your computer. How fast, it doesn't really matter, but you should be okay. Happy business. What you're looking for? What am I looking for?
They forgot to share what they were mentioning, but I believe we answered all the questions. Let's see. Let me just double check. Cool.
Okay.
Alrighty. Thanks for joining, everyone, and thanks for another great session and like a really amazing session, Habib. And thanks a lot for sharing the resources and everything. I will mention all the resources in the links in the description. And yeah, do you have any closing remarks for the students?
I should have prepared for that one. No, but I'm like my advice is just get into it, really. Like go ahead and open all the links, see what you can do, and
just explore.
Just start exploring. Maybe less YouTube videos and more looking at code.
Also documentation comes to be pretty handy. Nice.
I hope to see some of you like getting on board. If there is any questions, you can reach out to me directly. I'm also on Blender chat. But you'll find that out if you go through the links. So,
cool. I'll link all the links in the description, and you can reach out to the community members as well to get some guidance and stuff if you have any further questions. But thanks for joining, folks, and as always, keep up the good work, and we'll see you all in the next session. Have a great day. Have a great night, by the way. Bye.
Thank you. You too. Yeah, thanks a lot for organizing. It's been a great pleasure. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Habib. Have a great day.
See you.